Come join me to learn about genetic recombination, genetic ancestry testing, and how these were used to catch a spy in Star Trek Voyager right now. Hello, I'm Mohammed Noor. I'm a biology professor at Duke University, and I'm an occasional science consultant for the Star Trek universe. I'm very excited to talk with you today about how genetic ancestry testing works and how it was used in a particular episode of Star Trek Voyager when they're looking at a potential Cardassian, not Kardashian, spy. So let's dive right in. So this is from a first season episode of Star Trek Voyager called State of Flux. Now, most of this episode will seem to be focusing on figuring out who was giving Federation technology to this hostile alien species called the Kazon. Here's one right here. Now, one crew member, her name was Seska, was a focus of this investigation. So this is a picture of Martha Hackett. That's the actress who plays Seska. And I added some lines above her nose to make her look like a Bajoran. That was her purported species in the show. Okay? So Seska had a blood test done, and something was amiss. The doctor said, quote, her blood was lacking all the common Bajoran blood factors. The only conclusion we can reach is that she is not, in fact, Bajoran. It appears Seska has been genetically altered. My suspicion is she was born Cardassian. Now, this is a photo of the Cardassian species for reference. So things get even dicier from there. Seska gets confronted. She says that she got a bone marrow transplant from a Cardassian woman, and that's why her blood test looks weird. But let me go ahead and give away the punchline because this aired over 25 years ago. Seska was indeed a Cardassian spy. But let's explore the science behind what was said in this episode. So to do that, let's first talk about genetic testing, and specifically in the context of figuring out ancestry from someone's genetics. Okay? So let me start with a quick refresher. DNA. DNA is the molecule that contains instructions, and it's in the cells of all living things. It's made up of these 4 types of building blocks, and they're abbreviated using the letters A, C, G, and T. The DNA gets assembled into these large packages that we call chromosomes, and humans have 23 pairs of these chromosomes. The reason I say pairs here is because everyone inherits 1 copy of each of their chromosomes from their mom and 1 copy of each of their chromosomes from their dad. Now, over time, over generations, some of these letters will change through what are referred to as new mutations. And different mutations will crop up and they'll spread in different populations. So let's look at an example. Imagine the starting population. Looks pretty homogeneous. Everybody's AA, GG, AT, CC, TT. Now let's say this population gets divided into 2 new populations. Maybe the ones on the left migrate across the sea or mountain range. The ones on the right stay in the old place. So let's start looking at the left. Now let's say a new mutation crops up that changes that last T to an A, shown in red over here, okay? Now, over time, a lot of people in the next generations inherit this new A mutation from their parents, and some other new mutations might pop up too, like this T in green. So the population's a good bit different at the end from how it was at the very start. Meanwhile, in the right population, a whole bunch of different stuff's happening, okay? A different mutation, there's an A to a G at the very start. It also crops up, it spreads, and others like that second to last C in the bottom right also show up. So in the end, these 2 populations have a lot of differences. Some of them are fully diagnostic of whether they're from the left or right population because everybody is different, and some of them are somewhat different between the populations. Now imagine that you got a DNA sample from someone. You could use the DNA sequence to see if they're from the left population or if they're from the right population at the end. That's in essence what a genetic ancestry test does. But there's more to it. Because today, a lot of people have some mixed ancestry. So let's talk about inheritance and the process of genetic recombination briefly. Now, as I said earlier, everyone inherits 1 copy of every chromosome from their dad and 1 copy from their mom. So if the dad is from a blue population, the mom is from the red one, then you'd have 1 copy of red, 1 copy of blue. Okay? Straightforward. But interestingly, you may well not pass on a full blue or a full red chromosome to your kids. It's likely that instead in your cells, these chromosomes will swap large segments like this. So now it's part blue and part red. You've made a new combination. So the swap is called genetic recombination. And it's a really important process in genetics. Now, one of these new combinations is then what you're going to pass on to your kids through your eggs or through your sperm. So coming back to your eggs, this is one of the reasons that your kids won't all look the same because you pass on different combinations in your different eggs or in your different sperm. Now, over the last few hundreds of years, there's been a lot of mixing among human populations. So some individuals have bits of chromosomes from lots of different ancestral groups, which is really cool. Others, in contrast, maybe pretty homogeneous. Now, DNA testing companies like Ancestry.com or 23andMe will do an analysis to figure out what your ancestry is in different parts of your chromosomes. So today, we have complete DNA sequences from many, many thousands of people from all over the world, and we have massive genetic databases that can show what genetic variants are found in different parts of the world. Now, these companies will access those databases and use them to infer your genetic ancestry. So let me show you here. There's a picture of some of my genetic ancestry on chromosome 18. This was inferred using the company 23andMe. I apologize that the colors are kind of similar. This is from their website. They cluster colors by region. So unsurprisingly, at least to me, it's mostly Arab or Egyptian, though I do have a little stretch of Sudanese in there. And one small bit they couldn't quite narrow down for sure. They're at the end. But basically, North African, Arab overall. That's pretty cool. But let's take this back to the episode. The doctor said, again, quote, her blood was lacking all the common Bajoran blood factors. The only conclusion we can reach is that she is not, in fact, Bajoran. It appears Seska has been genetically altered. My suspicion is she was born Cardassian. Okay? Well, that blood factors piece may be referring to a genetic test, especially since there's a reference to genetics, but I confess it's a little bit unclear what's happening there. It could also be that just she has a blood type, like the ones we know from humans, like A, B, and O, that's just not found in Bajorans. But let's assume it was genetic, because that far in the future, it's going to be really, really easy to perform the genetic ancestry test for sure. In fact, that would be easy today. So what about this bone marrow business? Seska tried to explain it away by saying that she had a bone marrow transplant from a Cardassian. That was a really good call by the writers because bone marrow actually produces blood cells in our bodies. As such, if someone got a bone marrow transplant from another person, the white blood cells would have the genetic makeup of the bone marrow donor. Now, that said, even if the genetic test picked up the Cardassian ancestry from blood that came from the transplanted bone marrow, she's still got a lot of bones with active marrow. And presumably not every one of her bones had all the marrow fully replaced in this transplant. So if she was a Bajoran, there should still have been some white blood cells with Bajoran DNA. And that may well be how the doctor ruled out this explanation. But overall, lots of really cool and interesting science in this episode, and it makes a nice entry point for thinking about how genetic ancestry testing is done. What did you think of this episode? Did you know that Seska was a spy? And what do you think of the way they figured it out? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for tuning in to BioTrekkie Explains. See you next time.